If you grew up in the 1980s like I did, you were exposed to a golden era of animation. They were very interesting and entertaining cartoons. G.I. Joe, Transformers, Voltron. These great stories that cover the storylines of good and evil. I remember having watch parties with relatives of mine in the apartment complex that we lived in. We would all gather in front of the television and we would be entertained by these very powerful stories. Saturday morning was another thing of where it's like you wake up early and you want to sit and enjoy a lot of this entertainment. And the irony is, like, Sunday morning, when you're sitting inside of a pew in church, you're hearing these same type of stories in a different way, but it's still that story about good and evil. It's still that saga. What was interesting about those cartoons is that the names of the organizations, the names of the villains, Cobra Commander, head of the Cobra organization, a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world. And the Cobra organization, their tagline of they're determined to rule the world, you can draw parallels with communism during the 20th century. Different dictators who had that same type of mentality as that villain that we were watching on Saturday morning, where it's like they have an ideology and they're determined to rule the world with this one ideology. It's very fascinating. That famous ideology is Marxism, and with Marxism, it's about fixing the human condition through economics and through politics. During the 1980s, Dr. Thomas Sowell published a book called A Conflict of Visions, and it spoke about the two different visions that different leaders carry. There's groups of people that have this unconstrained vision where it's about fixing the human condition through human hands. And you could see Hitler was an example of that. He tried to create a racial utopia. And Marxism was a great example of that, where Lenin and Stalin and the Bolshevik Revolution, they wanted to fix the human condition, create this new Soviet man. But the constrained vision is what our founders had and what other people have had, where it's like, no, you can't fix the human condition with human hands. You could fix it with building the right institutions, the right laws, the right boundaries. When it comes to the unconstrained vision that many dictators have had, it's kind of like they see the world as a broken Rubik's Cube and they want to align all the colors, amend everything into their own vision. So it's like they're trying to be God themselves and create human beings through their own image. And they want those human beings to worship them. So you have this villain that's obsessed with power and they don't want to let it go. And they're determined to destroy everyone in their path just to hold on to this power. There's an article about the Soviet Union that was published nearly 30 years ago, and it's about tyranny and myth and how the only way you can support a tyranny, especially the Soviet system, the reason why it collapsed, because it was based on a myth. It was based on lies. The only way they could support this lie or this poetic truth was to keep telling people lies. It's like they're trying to sell this narrative that the sky is green because we say so. It's like they're trying to create their own reality and forcing people to believe it. Anybody who doesn't believe it, they pay the price for it. So many people died for no reason because certain people at the top were so determined to hold on to power that they were willing to create lie after lie. There's a 10-year-old article that covers Stalin and his struggle with the Balkan region and how he was so determined to hold on to his power within the Soviet bloc that he had problems with the Balkan region. Certain individuals like Yugoslavia that didn't want to comply. They didn't want to be under this Soviet system, that Soviet rule. It's kind of like the old story of, the child that is spoiled. They throw tantrums because they don't get their way. And it's like with the story of Joseph Stalin, you see how he was one of the heroes of World War II. The big three got together and they defeated the opposition. But the problem is there's a sense of entitlement there. It's like, we're entitled to this territory and these people need to be under our rule. Here comes the Iron Curtain, and here comes human rights being violated, human freedoms being violated. There's a 14th century poem known as the Divine Comedy. And the poem is separated in 3 parts, and one of them is called the Inferno. And within the Inferno, Dante takes a journey with his master Virgil into the 9 circles of hell. And the further they go down, the colder it becomes. And the 9 circles represent different levels of the human condition, or what humans struggle with, whether it's lust, greed, anger, or whatever. By the time they reach the bottom of the pit, they can see the fallen creature, the fallen angel, who tried to usurp his father or his creator, and you can see him stuck in ice. And the angel he looks like a bat. He lost all his power, and while he's stuck, he's eating the 3 greatest, most infamous traitors in world history. And they're Marcus Brutus, Gaius Cassius, and Judas Iscariot. It's metaphorical. You could draw parallel lines between this fallen creature who's frozen in this ice, who's obsessed with supernatural power to take his father's throne. But nothing he ever does is good enough. He's flapping his wings and making everybody else feel how cold he is. It's like a cold war that takes place within the human condition. Famous dictators that ruled throughout the 20th century, they're that angel that appeared and said, we're going to fix the human condition this way, and we're going to solve all the world's problems through this way. We're determined to rule the world through this new ideology, this new way of thinking. But they were never satisfied. No matter what they did, they could not obtain the supernatural power that they dreamed about having. It's like they lived in a fantasy world, and they became angels stuck in that ice.